Is the world's most expensive Team Corally also secretly the world's best basher buggy? And will this beautiful carbon fiber chassis even survive the first jump? Stay tuned, we're gonna find out. This is our first kit build from Team Corally, and everything looks really nicely individually labeled in its own bag per step. And we also get a really nice full color manual for the assembly of this super high-end car. Let's dig in. Opening up the first bag, we can see we've got some parts here that are very familiar to Team Corally and some stuff I've never seen before. The diff cases are plastic, but they're very thick plastic, and they do have metal inserts for the outputs. And interestingly, we get the choice between a plastic spur gear or a machined steel spur gear. For bashing, of course, we're gonna go with the steel one. These differentials are gonna go together pretty much like any other differential. We have a bearing that goes on the outside of the diff cup. Don't forget that, I do it all the time. Then on the inside, we've got an O-ring for sealing. We're gonna put a dab of grease on that. I'm just using Utter Butter. Then we're gonna drop one of these thin washers in here. Then we're gonna install our output cup. These are different from the normal Team Corally output cups as they are lightened. I don't know if they're gonna be as strong or not, but I guess we're gonna find out. One thing that was mentioned in a previous video is this groove is designed to hold grease. I don't normally grease this, but let's go ahead and do it. I do appreciate you guys educating me in the comments of anything I don't already know. I love to learn, so if you've got any other suggestions, make sure you put them down there. Now we just pop this in and install our cross pin. We do have steel pins for the spider gears, which look really, really nice. While I'm putting this together, I've had several people ask me what the purpose of a differential is, and it's actually pretty straightforward. Essentially, it's designed to allow a difference in output speed between the two sides. With the center differential, that's for the front and rear, and for the front and rear differential, that's for side to side with the wheels. The input for the differential is going to be attached to the outside of this case. For the center differential, it'll be this spur gear, and the outside of the case is attached to the inside gears through these two cross pins. Those cross pins drive these four spider gears, and those spider gears interact with the side gears, which are connected to the outputs. Under normal operation, everything spins together, but when the outputs need to spin at different speeds, these gears can turn internally, allowing the output cup to move at a different speed from the input, which is what gives you that differential action. Because this is a race car, Team Corally recommends 7,500 center differential fluid. That's going to be way too thin for bashing, so we're going to go with 1 million. Why we're going with fluid that's so much thicker gets to the heart of the purpose of these differentials. In racing, the center differential is mainly used for tuning traction and handling. But in bashing, its primary goal is to help decouple the front and rear of the drivetrain in order to protect them from shock loads. You don't want there to be too much decoupling though, otherwise you'll just have big pizza cutter ballooning front tires under acceleration, and you won't be able to do any wheelies. The front and rear differentials are going to go together basically the same as the center differential. I did want to point out that this ring gear is different from what you would see on an RTR Team Corally. It appears to be higher quality and maybe even lightened a little bit. And just like that, all three differentials are together. I did go with the recommended differential fluid for the front and rear diffs, and that's because they serve basically the same function on a race car as on a basher. When a car is driving in a straight line, all four wheels drive at the same speed, but when you turn, the inner wheel has to go a shorter distance than the outer wheel, which means the outer wheel actually has to move faster to get around that turn. The front and rear differential allows those two wheels to move at different speeds, which is why they're there. I think these bulkheads are identical to what we've seen on previous Team Corally cars. What we haven't seen on other Team Corally cars are these shock towers. These things are just about 5 millimeters thick, and they look really nice. I'm curious to see how they're going to handle bashing though, as I have broken carbon fiber shock towers in the past, though these do look really high quality. Another new thing, at least to me, is this universal joint center drive shaft. These universal joints have the advantage of being very strong while also being really, really smooth and potentially less susceptible to wear due to things like dirt and debris. When installing this, it's nice to see that Team Corally is using a good oversized grub screw. Having something larger like this is great for future maintenance, as it's much less likely to strip out, especially since you need to thread lock it. The A, B, C, D blocks are really nice 70-75 aluminum, and they have these plastic pills in them. These pills are really designed to allow you to fine-tune your suspension, but I find that they help absorb shock loads, and they're cheap and easy to replace if they get worn. One thing I'm not super thrilled about is how screws are called out in this manual. As you can see, they do give you the screw size as well as the screw length, but the manual isn't giving a one-to-one representation of that screw length. This means if you have similar length screws in the bag, you're going to have to measure them out in order to make sure you've got the right one. That's not a huge deal, though. I would prefer if they gave us actual lengths on the screws so we don't have to measure them. These upper shock posts appear to be the same ones from the standard Team Corally cars. The nice thing about that is if we want to upgrade them, the units from M2C or other companies should fit perfectly. The screws for the shock tower are backed with actual lock nuts. The benefit of this is that they'll never strip out. The downside is they can fall out when you're working on it. They definitely are stronger though. For a given size, carbon fiber is actually stronger than aluminum. The main problem with carbon fiber as opposed to aluminum, though, is when it fails catastrophically. So instead of just having something that's a little bit bent, you have something that's destroyed and needs to be replaced. Whether or not that's going to happen here is something we're just going to have to find out. One thing I do find interesting is they don't include any shims for this differential in the packaging, and they also don't mention shimming in the manual. There is enough room here to add some shims, and I think we could do with a little bit of shimming, but this is how it comes out of the box. So this is how we're going to install it, and we're going to go with no shims whatsoever. Though saying that, now that it's together, it does feel pretty good. The last part on this bulkhead is going to be this little hinged piece. This is going to be for the included sway bar, which we'll be installing in a minute. This piece being hinged is a nice touch. That way you won't lose it when you take this cover off to service the differential. I really like that. Assembly of the rear bulkhead starts essentially the same way as the front, though the rear tower includes things like balls for the rear upper links, as well as the rear wing mount, which in itself requires a bit of assembly before getting attached to the bulkhead just like the front one. And just like on the front, these rears use really nice machined 7075 blocks and those same plastic pill inserts. And just like on the front, we have no shims for the differential, so this is going to go together however it is, and we'll just see how it goes. Although again, to be fair, this is pretty much how I would set the backlash anyway, so I guess it's fine. To the rear bulkhead, we also add this extra little mount here, which allows us to install this beautiful 7075 tower to chassis brace. I have to say, these parts from Team Corally really do feel premium. And while this car is expensive, for the most part, you can feel where the money's going. Also need to add this rear body mount in, which actually requires the body mount post to be installed first. Speaking of the body, I've got something a little special planned for the body on this car. And speaking of special, we're getting close to hitting 50,000 subscribers. When I do, I've got a big giveaway planned. If you want that giveaway to happen as soon as possible, make sure you hit that button to get subscribed. And don't forget to hit that bell so you get notified when you win. Next up's going to be the steering. The first step of that is the steering servo turnbuckle. Turnbuckles are kind of the most annoying thing to assemble on a kit. We're going to start by installing the ball ends. As you can see, there's one smaller side and one larger side. The ball end's going to go into the larger side, and then we're going to use our installation tool to go ahead and install it. You can do it without one of these installation tools, but it's a lot easier with them. And by the way, we're definitely going to be giving away some tools in that 50K giveaway. Let me know down in the comments what tools you'd like to see in it. The actual turnbuckle itself has a right-hand thread and a left-hand thread. The normal right-hand thread side's always marked by these notches. And to install it, you simply screw the ends on down to the specified length in the manual. If you're working with larger turnbuckles, you can use a little bit of chapstick on the threads. That really helps them screw on easier. It's not really necessary with these smaller ones though. You just want to make sure the turnbuckle is even, and when you're done, you've got the same length specified in the manual. And you also want to pay attention to the orientation of the ends. In this case, they want that notch going toward the unthreaded side. I believe this servo and receiver box is identical to what we see in the RTR Team Corallis, and we're going to use this Savox SB-2280 SG servo. One thing you'll notice when installing this servo and many other servos is that one side of the screw holes don't exactly line up. This is completely normal, as the standard size servo actually comes in two slightly different lengths, and the servo mounts are often set up for the longer one. That's not actually going to hurt anything though. And you can just install the servo as you normally would. We're gonna go ahead and skip installing the receiver for now. And the next step is to install these side pods on this gorgeous molded carbon fiber chassis. This is the nicest carbon fiber chassis I've ever seen. As you can see, it's about 3.5 millimeters thick, and it only weighs about 6.8 ounces, which is pretty light for a chassis of this size. Is this chassis actually gonna hold up to real bashing though? That's what we're here to find out. By the way, I'm going to be testing some even crazier materials pretty soon. It should be a really interesting video, and I'm excited to see what the results of it are going to be. And with those two parts installed, this thing's really starting to look like a car, and I'm getting excited to see how it's gonna handle. In lieu of a tower-to-tower brace, it looks like we're gonna get these reinforcement strips for the chassis. That's actually really nice to see and gives me some good hope that it's gonna survive a big crash. Now with those in, we can install our center differential, which gets covered up by this sweet carbon fiber plate that I installed upside down. With that installed, we're going to make sure our center differential spins freely, which it does. Always make sure every part that you put together works properly before you move on to the next step. It's always going to be faster to fix a problem right when you find it than down the road, especially if you miss it and you end up breaking something. The next thing we're going to install is this battery tray, and it actually looks completely different from what I'm used to seeing on Team Corally bashers. It looks like you can install it with the ESC facing forward or with the ESC facing backward. We're going to install it with the ESC to the front because that'll make wiring easier, but I'm assuming this is for weight distribution reasons. The RTR Team Corally battery tray actually has a tendency to break. I'm really curious to see if this one's going to hold up better or worse. It is only held in with 2 screws, so that's a little bit less secure than the stock one is, though the ESC tray is floating, which should give it a little bit of cushion for heavy landings. Next up, we're going to put the steering posts in. These don't have indentations in the chassis. That means it'll be a little bit stronger in this area, but it also means that when we go to unscrew this, since they're going to be thread locked, the post itself might end up turning, which can be problematic for maintenance and repair. In this case, though, with the carbon fiber, I'll take the strength over the ease of repairability, and I think that was the right choice to make. With all that together, now we just need to put the rear and front ends on. And just like that, the drivetrain's pretty much done, and this is one of the smoothest drivetrains I've ever felt. It feels really good. And just like that, I need to take these differential covers back off because I forgot to lubricate the diffs. I'm gonna take just a tiny bit of this udder butter and put it right there, and that's it. That's all the lubrication I'm gonna use. That's gonna spread around to all these gear teeth and lubricate them perfectly sufficiently. The reality is the amount of lubricant your gears use is actually just a microscopic film on the teeth itself, and lubricant anywhere other than that little film on the teeth really doesn't do you any good and just makes a mess. To show you how it spreads out, I'm going to put this differential in here and just spin it a few times. And then pulling it out, you can see there is grease on every single one of these teeth, and it'll get even more even as it actually runs. I'd recommend using something like this udder butter. It makes a great grease, it's waterproof, and it stays put and doesn't make a mess. To be honest, with as little use as these differential gears get compared to gears in something like industry, you probably don't need any grease at all and it would be fine. But I do know people like to use grease, so again, just a dabble, do ya? Of course, we don't know how all this carbon fiber is going to perform, but I have to say, this is probably the sexiest buggy I've ever seen. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Next, we need to put together the steering system, and this looks like a pretty stout unit. We've got a 7075 Arrma bar here, as well as an upper Arrma tie-in. Part of the servo saver is 7075 aluminum, but the other part is plastic. This is a perfect combination because you get the strength of the aluminum and the lubricity of the plastic, so it doesn't end up jamming up from galling between aluminum and aluminum. The included spring feels reasonably stiff, though maybe not quite as stiff as I would like for bashing. And the adjustable preload nut does have an O-ring in it. This O-ring is designed to stop the nut from coming unscrewed on its own, and it does that by gripping the threads of the post, though we are going to add just a touch of thread locker as well. The way this is designed is really nice. The nut actually grabs the post before there's tension on the spring. That means you're not fighting the spring when you go to put the nut on, which makes it a lot easier to assemble. The manual specifies tightening this adjuster down until there's about 3 millimeters of thread left. I went a bit further than that because I know we have a good servo, and I know we're going to be doing bashing. That feels still pretty loose. I might go a tiny bit tighter. Keep in mind, the tighter you go with that nut, the better your steering response is going to be, but the more likely it is that you're going to break your servo in a crash. This does use bearings in the pivots instead of bushings. That's nice to see. And it uses these steel inserts to go through the arms. And now with that all together, we can drop it on the chassis. Hopefully I put it together correctly. There's a lot of little parts on here and it's easy to get things wrong, but looks like we got it right this time. Now, because these bags are numbered, we never got to bag D, but we have finally reached the point of FU. This front upper hinge pin mount is also 7075 aluminum and also uses these nice little plastic pills, which should help absorb energy in crashes. And that attaches to this carbon fiber upper plate. I think this hole with the Team Corally showing through it looks really, really nice. And to this upper plate, we're also going to mount the front body post. And then after installing this beautiful 7075 front brace, and flipping around the FU, which we installed backwards, the top plate just falls right into place. Before we install it though, I'm not sure if you noticed, but I seem to have lost my bearing. I looked all over for it and I can't find it. Fortunately, I do have a replacement. If you guys have ever done any big jobs, you'll know that sometimes things fall on the floor and they're just gone. That bearing, never to be found again. As we install the top plate, we also need to install these upper front arms. These arms are unique to this car. I don't think they're shared with anything else in the Team Corally line. They look really nice, but hopefully they'll be strong enough to handle some bashing because again, these are designed for racing. And putting this in, I just realized this entire plate's upside down. This screw is offset to the wrong side. That's pretty frustrating, and I think I need to take a break. If there's one thing I've learned over the last 25 years, it's that this hobby is supposed to be fun, and if you're not having fun, it's time to walk away from it for a few minutes, grab a car, do some bashing, or go do something else entirely. Getting frustrated and letting yourself stay frustrated when doing a build, doing a repair, or even bashing means you're not having fun anymore, and that goes against what the hobby is supposed to be about. So whenever I find that I'm getting too frustrated and make mistake after mistake, I just stop, grab a car, go do some bashing, maybe go for a walk, and go get my head clear so that I can come back with a more clear mind and make sure I'm doing the best job and that I'm having the most fun I can
It doesn't even take that long. Sometimes just a few minutes, a half a pack with a car, do some jumps, bash around, and it can really make the rest of a frustrating build go much, much more smoothly. That's why we're out here, and this is definitely putting that smile back on my face and getting my head clear.
All right, with our break taken and our heads cleared, let's finish this build strong. The lower front arms are also unique to this buggy, and they come with these nice little carbon fiber inserts to increase stiffness. Increased arm stiffness isn't always an advantage when bashing, but they look really cool, so we're going to use them. Another really nice thing this kit comes with are these really trick droop screws. These droop screws set the amount of down travel you can have in your arms and are important for tuning as well as limiting the travel of the shocks so you don't end up blowing them out. These are unique because they're completely smooth on the bottom and only have a socket in the top. I suspect that's to prevent damage to the ears of this carbon fiber chassis and is a nice touch. Because of the design, they go in from the bottom but actually get drawn in through the top. And with those in, we can go ahead and pop these lower arms in. Both the upper and lower arms have these little grub screw holes. These are designed to take up slack in the pin to hole interface. For bashing, that's really not necessary, so we're just going to leave them out, but it is an option if you want it. Being a race buggy, this does just have a tiny little bumper on it, but at least it has a bumper at all. And these sway bar end links are pretty fancy. Instead of screwing into the arm, they've got a pin that goes in just like on the Arrma shocks, and then they tighten up with a little grub screw, which is convenient because when you install them in backwards, they're really easy to swap around. This buggy uses pillow ball front suspension, and the pillow balls are pretty trick. The balls themselves are aluminum, but the shafts are steel. I'm not sure how much practical advantage there is to this, but it sure looks cool. The rest of this goes together like any standard pillow ball suspension you would see on a Team Corally or an Arrma. We do have universal joints for the drive shafts in the front, and then these wheel hexes are kind of tricky. You can see they're lightened here and here, but they haven't lightened them where the pin goes through, so the pin can be longer and therefore stronger. Now, after putting these reinforcement caps on the arms, we can put the balls through here and screw them in. Because those balls are aluminum, the hexes in them are also aluminum, which means they could strip out more easily than steel ones, so just make sure your bit's in there nice and tight before you screw them in or try to take them out. Now we just need to install the ball cups. Be careful as you install these. It is fairly easy to cross-thread them as you start, and because they're screwing into plastic, once they start cross-threaded, they're going to keep trying to stay cross-threaded. Now we just need to pop on our steering plate. And this side's done. We just need to do the exact same thing for the other side. Then drop in the sway bar, and the front suspension on this beautiful carbon beast is pretty much done. The rear arms install basically identically to the front. The rear hubs are really nicely machined 7075 aluminum. The upper tabs, again, just like many other parts, are carbon fiber. And just like the front, the rear uses really nice looking universal drive shafts, which all put together look just like this. I also assembled the upper rear links. These look really beefy. And here it all is installed on the car. This installation went really smoothly. And speaking of which, this drivetrain's probably the smoothest one I've ever felt on a kit I've built. This feels really high quality. The last big thing we need to assemble before we take this thing for a rip are the shocks. If you've ever worked with Team Corally shocks before, these should look really familiar. They do use quad rings for sealing. These quad rings work better for sealing because there's more contact area on the inside than you get with an O-ring. And even though they're more costly, they are definitely superior. I'm gonna put just a dab of O-ring grease in there so they don't get torn up. Then we've got a hard plastic spacer, another quad ring, an O-ring that goes on the outside, the outer shaft guide, and then the bottom cap. The kit comes with two different shock pistons, 6-hole and 8-hole. The book recommends 8, so that's what we're going to go with. Before we install the shock shaft, we just need to put this lower eye on. There's no length specification for these shock shafts, so you just keep going till it gets a little bit tighter. And that feels like that's bottomed out. Now we just push the shock shaft up through the bottom. Install the washer. This can be pretty tricky, but if you just hold the washer up and actually put the shock body on top of it, it's fairly straightforward. Next comes the shock piston, and finally the retaining nut. We need to remove the spring perch because there's an O-ring that goes in it. This O-ring is designed to prevent the spring perch from moving when you don't want it to. And with that reinstalled, we just need to put the bladder in the shock cap. These shock caps are identical to what we see on the RTR Team Corally cars. I would have liked to have seen some higher end ones on here because these do tend to get bent occasionally with bashing. And then finally, we need to fill it up with fluid. I'm just going to use some 700 CST here. This is a little bit thicker than they probably recommend, though there are no recommendations in the manual, but it should be fine for general bashing. Of course, that's just a guess, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to bump the air out of here by pushing the shock shaft up and down. And then finally, we put the shock cap on. There's a little bleeder hole here in the side. This allows you to push the remainder of the excess air and fluid out. Just push the shaft all the way up, make a nice big mess, holding the shaft up, finish tightening the cap, and pop our spring on, lower spring spring perch, and this shock is done. I did the other 3 off camera. Let's get these on the car. And then finally, with the addition of the wing, this carbon beauty is done. And I have to say, this is the best looking RC car I've ever built. It's absolutely stunning. Because of how beautiful it is, I decided to go with a clear body with just stickers. That way we can see all that gorgeous carbon fiber. Now let me just finish installing the electronics and see if Team Corally just built a beauty or if they secretly made a bashing beast.
All right, let's get a top speed on this thing. Obviously, the way I have it set up might not be the way you have it set up, so your top speed's gonna be different from mine. But let's see what we've got. We've got Durtrax lockups on here. Whoa, that's a lot faster than I thought it was gonna be. Holy crap. Handles really well too. Let's get another pass. Full throttle. Wow, that's fast. I've got this thing geared a little more aggressively than I thought. We've got a 6S pack in here, and it is lighter than something like a TLR Typhon would be. I weighed it, and it's only about 7.4 pounds, which is about 10% lighter than a TLR Typhon. But that thing is quick, and it handles so well. Let's do one more of those. Oh my gosh. All right, let's see what we got. 53 miles an hour. That ought to do it for a basher. Okay, we know it's fast, but is it fun? So far, so good. This thing is so smooth sounding for having a steel spur. Yeah, this thing really gets it. These lockup tires are really, really good for a buggy, though they do have a lot of lateral grip, so if you're not careful, you can roll it over even with a super low center of gravity. Speaking of that center of gravity, I've been curious to see how this carbon fiber chassis does. It's lighter than a comparable aluminum chassis, and I expect that means the center of gravity is going to be just a little bit higher, but it really doesn't seem to make much difference here. And this thing is handling off-road very, very well. The suspension is a little bit stiff. That was by design. I expect we're going to be doing some pretty big jumps here in a minute to test just how durable it is. And because of that, I wanted to make sure the chassis was stiff enough to handle them. But overall, on this rough stuff here, it's doing a pretty darn good job, staying nice and composed, and this buggy feels really, really good. It's predictable, it's easy to recover from, and wow, it's dusty out here. We'll try to stay on the other side of the dust, but I am super impressed with this thing. It has enough power to get itself out of control though. Even out in fairly tall grass where you can barely see it, it's quick and it handles well. And yeah, it's so predictable. It starts to get up on 2 wheels and you can catch it. It really doesn't make any snap movements, and this thing feels absolutely awesome. Again, it's a race buggy and it's an expensive race buggy, so I would have been surprised if it didn't handle well, and I'm not surprised. Let's find out if we're going to be surprised by its durability or not. Now, this is where the very different properties of carbon fiber and aluminum are going to come into play. Carbon fiber, if made correctly, is significantly stronger than 7075 aluminum. The problem is, when it breaks catastrophically. 7075 aluminum can reach plastic deformation. That was a pretty good jump. And it'll be bent a little bit, but you can bend it back and then keep using it. Carbon fiber, once it breaks, it's broken and it's junk. Let's see if we can get a backflip out of it. Absolutely. This thing lands pretty nicely too. I am very, very impressed with how this thing handles. This is the first really high-end car I've had from Team Corally, and it might not be my last. Of course, we are definitely going to be durability testing this thing in a minute, but I just want to get a few jumps out of it before we shatter something. I mean, hopefully we don't shatter anything, but holy crap, that was a big jump. On the wheels. A little small jump here. It handles so well. See if we can get a backflip out of it. No problem whatsoever. All right, seems to be handling these good landings just fine. Let's see how it handles a bad landing. Start out small. Oh, right on the nose. That was a hard hit. No damage so far. Let's keep going. I have to say, I'm already impressed with that. There was a lot of force on that hit. And there's going to be quite a bit on this one. Never mind, did a little front flip. Got a little bit of a rattle in the drivetrain. Something might be coming loose on me. On the wing, still no damage. Let's go a little higher. Oh boy, here we go. Oh, right on one of the arms. Still good. Let's keep going. See if we can't get a bit of a different angle for you here. Up over the head. Little bit of a crash landing there, not too bad. Let's see if we can make it worse. The goal is to see what this thing can take ultimately. Right on the arm. Still holding together. So it's definitely not fragile. All right, let's give it some ultimate testing. Here we go. Right on the nose. Oh, God, that was hard. But as you can see, that carbon fiber is still in perfect condition. We'll give her a couple more like that. Right on the nose. Boom. Still good. Try one more on the nose. I was honestly expecting this thing to break sooner. See how high we can go? On the nose. Bam. And still good. Let's flip this over. Oh, something broke. Nothing broke, just had a screw fall out. That's really common on brand new builds. Let's take a couple tower shots. Oh, right on that front tower. Again though, 0 damage. Let's do it from a little bit higher. Something's definitely gonna break here. Oh, front end hit. Didn't quite get the tower. Let's try that again. Full throttle. Tower. Oh, right on the front tower. Let's see if it broke. It did not break. That is crazy. All right, guys. Well, I have to say, I think this thing is at least as strong as an aluminum version. Whoops. Might need to trim that tree at some point. It handles so well, too. All right, one more bad hit. Right on the nose. And it's still good.
Okay guys, we did manage to break it, but before I show you what broke, let's talk about price, because this thing ain't cheap. Just the kit on this carbon version is over $800, meaning once you get all the electronics into it, you're gonna be into it for well over $1,000. And that's twice as much as some RTR basher buggies. With that being said, you can tell where the money went. You've got beautiful 70-75 chassis to tower braces, all of this gorgeous carbon fiber, a buggy that handles very competently right out of the box, even at high speed off-road, and an overall great driving experience. But how was it to build? Overall, as a kit, I would give this an 8 out of 10. It was very pleasant to build for the most part, but there were a few minor issues with things like screws being too short. Not too short to use, but a little bit shorter than I'd like to see them. And the manual, while overall clear and correct, did have a couple of minor issues. The biggest one being that screw sizes aren't to scale, so you actually have to measure screws to make sure you get them right. Overall, I wouldn't recommend this as someone's first kit, but I definitely would as their second kit. But now, what did we break with all that bashing? We didn't break the rear carbon tower, that's still perfect. We didn't break the front carbon tower, that's perfect as well. Even with all those nose landing hits from about 15 feet in the air, we didn't break the chassis. It is also in perfect condition other than a few scratches. What we broke is the same thing I break on pretty much every Team Corally car I bash, and that's the battery strap. It snapped in one of those big upside down landings. This is a fairly heavy 6S battery and probably took forces it wouldn't normally take in general bashing or racing. But Team Corally does offer reinforced Kevlar straps, and in a kit this expensive, I'd like to see them. My ESC also fell off, but that's my fault. Obviously, I didn't get it mounted down properly. Other than that though, nothing broke, and I put about 3 packs of pretty heavy normal bashing on this thing, and I'm really impressed with it. This isn't my first experience with carbon fiber towers or chassis, but this is my first experience with really high quality ones from first party, and I have to say I'm impressed. Like I said, carbon fiber does have a higher ultimate tensile strength than even 70-75 aluminum while being lighter. Its only real downside is when it fails catastrophically, so you're going to be replacing it, although in this case I didn't have anything fail. So is carbon fiber the future of bashing? Well, at this price, no, but this is a high-end race car, not a basher. Though if manufacturers could manage to put this kind of strength and quality into something a little bit cheaper, I think it's really got a chance. It's really strong, really light, and looks really, really cool. You know what else looks really, really cool? One of these videos.